What's up, my friends? Coach Rob here from Athletic Strength Club. Welcome to the Athletic Strength Club podcast. With me today are Coach Kyle, as always, and our new coach, Coach Zach. Today we'll be giving Coach Zach the opportunity to intro himself, and we will be chatting about speed. So if you are slow, this episode is for you. So first up, we're going to have Coach Zach introduce himself. Coach Zach was introduced to me by Coach Kyle. These two trained together. And Coach Zach, let us know about maybe a little bit about your backstory, what you did in high school, sports you did, anything else you want to lay out is great, and some training background and training experience is good too.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I'm Coach Zach. I've been training in kind of around this this field for about 9 years now. Whether if it's just kind of one-on-one training or group fitness, anything like that. Kind of grew up in it with my family. In high school, I was a track athlete. I started in middle school with we have as modified programs into varsity. I did high jump mostly. It started back when my grandpa was actually a high jumper too, back when you actually had to do the scissor-kick.
Yeah.
And then my mom was a high jumper. She was actually a county champion. And then I was a high jumper. I was a state champion in 2019. And then now my baby sister is a national champion.
Amazing.
And I was still doing that. I would say it runs in the family, but it doesn't. It jumps in the family. But I've always had a kind of an athletic background to myself. So I figured that I might as well just keep that and use that as a career because I really enjoy what I do. And I find it so much easier to actually gather information, to actually learn rather than trying to force myself to do something that I'm not really wanting to do, but to just be better at it and kind of force myself, like I said, to just, learn this information when it's not something I entirely want to do.
You want to learn about it and you dive in on your own.
And it's just so easy to kind of keep that information and
definitely
really be able to kind of take all the different opinions that I've found. Or it's my favorite part is being able to connect two dots that are so far away from each other, and being able to help someone with a problem that not a lot of people see, is just kind of that diagnostic kind of situation. What I like to do now is primarily work with higher level athletes where you kind of get into that fine tuning, capabilities with them because they're already coming in with, from other high level coaches, such as collegiate athletes or something like that, or just even higher level, high school athletes. Cause sometimes you have those athletes that are just exceeding cause they're doing their own work. And it's kind of hard to figure that out with, some of the high school coaches. Cause some of those high school coaches are just people that want an after school job. So that's kind of where I like to come into play and really help out because I was an athlete myself and also not too long ago. I haven't competed myself in track. I mostly just like to lift weights and just get as strong as I can now. So not quite as fast or as jumpy as I used to be, but I still got a 30-inch vertical. We're still there at 270 pounds.
It's amazing. It's still very strong, obviously.
Very, yeah. So happy about that.
You mentioned your parents too. So your mom was you said county champion high jumper.
Yeah.
And what about your dad as well?
My dad was a professional strongman. Actually, he competed a little bit with his pro card. Yeah. That was funny. You actually went up against some people like Mark Felix. The only thing is he was natural. Yeah. So, still really strong, but that's definitely a really tough competition.
To compete if you're staying natural. Definitely. Yeah.
So he was very, very good with what he did. He was, I think, at 340 pounds at his heaviest. So that's where I get most of my strength and my body type from, which I'm very thankful that I have really good set of parents, for some
good genetics
for how tall and just being able to be as wide as I can be, So he was a professional strongman for a couple years. Now he's just training, having fun, trying to stay nice and fit and be as strong as he can too, while still being healthy. And he's also now training people, along with where my sister gets trained as well. Because my sister's lucky enough to have sponsorships.
Amazing.
But
good stuff, man.
Been fun, having a lot of fun with what I do.
That's it. How'd you meet Zach? Let's have you pop in here.
Yeah, we met at Gold's Gym years ago. 3 years ago now, probably something like that.
Yeah.
I was training with another friend of mine, but then he kind of just stopped showing up, had some troubles outside of the gym. And then Zach and I he would spot me on certain lifts and whatnot. And then we're like, hey, let's just let's just build a program together and lift. And
Best program.
Nice.
it was not a good program. Yeah. We were like, yeah, let's go 6 days a week. And we were in the gutter in 2 weeks. No doubt. But to say we've come a long way with our programming, our training, we definitely have. But yeah, that's how we met, Gold's Gym right there. And been lifting ever since, PR City ever since, you know.
Sweet.
So
Always kind of knew of each other from school.
yeah, we went to
Yeah.
high school together. He's 2 years older than me, so we knew of each other. But yeah, it
He's
was
200 pounds stronger than me.
but yeah, but yeah, then we met Gold's Gym officially, you know, and then that's how we started lifting together, and here we are now. So
That's it. Very cool. Good stuff.
Having fun.
Yep.
As much fun as we can.
Having a good time.
That's
You're
it.
both at ASC for the
Mhm.
time being.
That's right.
See how it
Yep,
goes.
still having fun.
That's important. Life should be fun. Got to
Absolutely.
get some work done. We got to have a good time while we do it.
Oh,
Otherwise,
Absolutely.
what are we doing?
Absolutely.
That's right. That's funny because
Yeah.
a lot of people always see me kind of dancing in the gym.
Yeah.
You know, with any of the gyms that I've worked at or anything, I'm always just kind of dancing, having fun. I feel like at least with working with like younger kids or athletes like that, it makes them feel more comfortable.
Yep.
Because, you know, they come into an environment where they can feel a lot of pressure.
Mhm.
You know, I've been able to luckily deal with that pressure and kind of take it away and just use it as fun.
Yep.
So a lot of those kids I feel like really feel they can express themselves a little more. You know, they want to come and they want to be a little wacky. Like, that's all right as long as we're getting that
As long
work
as we
done.
get the
you
work
know?
done.
Have fun.
Yeah,
with
that's
it.
what it's about too. You know,
Yeah.
it's like you want them to associate working out as fun. You know,
Exactly.
there's
right.
going to be
It shouldn't be a miserable.
there's going to be workouts that suck and they're challenging, but at the end of the day, you're like, man, that was good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was fun. Move
At
on.
the end of the day, you want to look forward to going to the gym. And as much as it's a grind, you leave and you're like, that was cool. Like, I had a good time. I did something new. I got accomplished something big. Yeah, that's great. I think that's good too. You want to have fun. You want them to express themselves. Sometimes they're like, you know, they're obviously nervous too, because it's like they come into the gym and it's like pretty much we're stronger than everybody that comes in, except for the occasional freak maybe. But like
Yeah.
for the most part, you're stronger than everybody that comes into the gym to train with you. So like they're gonna be a little intimidated. Sometimes they want to like impress you or something, and it's like sometimes they're trying to impress you and you're actually not impressing you because you're like you're trying to do too many push-ups and they look like trash. Like just cut it.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The first few were good, and now you're just, I don't know why you're doing that.
Yeah.
Like, stop.
I have a kid that comes in, all of a sudden he jumps my vertical. I'm like, all right, but let's cut that.
No more.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, no.
Let's put weights in your hands so you don't get as high now.
We're not going to
Nah.
test this actually.
Oh, man, that's funny. All right. So we got Coach Zach's background for a little bit. I'm sure there's obviously tons more to know. But next, the main focus of this episode, we're going to chat a little bit about speed. Zach has a good background in speed, so we'll let him take the reins on some of these things. But we want to talk about speed work first, a little bit of power work, and obviously we'll get into strength as well because all these things are complementary. We're going to have some graphs for you guys today. We got the force velocity curve for you. We also have a little pyramid highlighting the importance of movement, strength, and general physical preparedness, and then sport specialization. So a lot of you guys out there are getting right into sport specialization and you're leaving out the strength and you're leaving out the movement. Movement is the base of every pyramid. Strength and general physical preparedness is the middle of the pyramid, and specialization is the top, right? So most of you are very good with your specialization skills, but have very poor movement. As whenever you come into our gym, we run a little movement screen. We look at your hip mobility, shoulder mobility, ankle mobility, and at least one of those three is off in basically everybody that comes in, if not two or all three of those. So we'll brush up on that a little bit. And yeah, I think that's the majority of it. So anybody want to hop in
Well, I can start with
on anything?
Yeah. Well, obviously, given that we're going to be talking a lot about speed, I feel like there's a lot of things that, going into something like, obviously, we want to take track, for example, that's just ultimately mostly running. If we're taking stuff like people just trying to run in general, it correlates all the way across, no matter how you're kind of moving, your body kind of generally, obviously given to some people's anatomy can change slightly, but generally across the board, how you're moving is going to be relatively the same comparatively to pretty much everybody and how they're moving, whether if it's multi-directional or linear. And a lot of people, growing up, how many times have you heard like, oh, run on your toes? Just from people like, don't run on your heels, run on your toes. Like, obviously running on your heels is incorrect.
Ouch.
Unfortunately, running on your toes is also incorrect.
Yeah.
You know, it's in a really weird position in the way I like to describe that, you know, starting off when we're doing something maybe just like acceleration or top speed, when we're doing on our heels, you know, you're primarily feeling your bone. You know, if you want to just take it, your heel is a bone. You know,
you take your shoes off, and you're definitely not doing that.
Yeah,
too.
you don't
only
want
doing that because you got
know,
shoes on.
Trying to slam your heel, you know. But if you also, you know, that's a lot of skeletal system right there. Go into the opposite end of the spectrum right there, all the way on your toe. Feel a lot of your calf. You know, you don't necessarily feel your tibialis when you're doing that because like your calf will take over most of that. But that's just a lot of muscular system. That's where people usually get their shin splints from. You know, a lot of people take shin splints as like, oh, I just need to rest a little bit and maybe ice, roll out, and then keep running. But what they don't understand is it's an actual like injury, you know, having those like micro tears in the tibialis and just around. So really it is just about trying to strike kind of in the middle of the foot. If you want to take like where your arch is in the middle of your foot, try to get towards the front of the arch. I don't really like using the term the balls of your feet because that's still just a little bit too far, you know, because I can still be on the balls of my feet with my toes way high. You know, you almost want to think about it like your foot, the heel has about enough to basically fit a piece of paper underneath the ground. You can be as low as you can without your heel touching the ground. That's kind of where you want to feel that, just that pressure on your foot. Now, the difference between that, at least
sorry to interrupt. What do you think about Stuart McMillan? Stuart McMillan, yeah, he's the guy. He likes to think, or he says like land flat-footed, which is you're trying to basically land basically the way you described it, but that's the way he tells most of his sprint people. He says whatever speed you're running at, your gait will take care of itself as long as you're landing like that flat-footed. Right, you're trying not to hit the heel. You're trying not to be on the ball of the foot, but you're kind of trying to like roughly mid-foot strike, which sounds pretty much like what you're describing too.
Yeah. Right? So what's good about that is that, especially now if we're at top speed, you know, when we're at top speed, our bodies are straight up, you know, straight 90 degree from the ground, and landing flat-footed. It kind of helps us, especially if we have a good knee drive. We have the correct position for our foot to actually strike on the ground. A lot of people want to, you know, they always say, oh, you got big strides, use those strides. Overstriding is a huge thing. And it's very easy to achieve. You know, your foot wouldn't, I mean, it can go a little bit in front of where your hip position is, but it should stay to a couple inches at most, like maybe up to 4, like not even really 4 can be extending it a little bit too much. But directly underneath yourself is the most optimal position. So you're kind of letting yourself come forward. You're letting your foot come down. And even though you're the one propelling your force downwards, even if you just were standing and let your foot drop from a good knee position with knee drive, it lands in the correct position. Because when we're doing top speed, that running is a pull. Everybody thinks that you're running is a push, only in acceleration, which usually if we're talking about it for like track, for example, that acceleration at 100-meter dash,
a phase of that.
Lasts for about like 40 meters. You know, it's a long phase. And, you know, the confusion that people get a lot from it is like trying to unlearn how they ran for 12 years growing up or something like that.
It's a very difficult thing to change.
So they have to unlearn, and then all of a sudden now you have to learn 3 different phases and everything. And like, even like Kyle, you were a football player too, you know, if you were a lineman and you went off the line and you stood straight up, what's going to happen?
Yeah, you're getting driven
you're going right back,
you
know, and the same thing for even if you're a track runner, if you shot off the line and stood straight up, your acceleration's in the gutter. You know, you definitely need to keep that 45 degree nice and low, you know, while keeping your body and core nice and tight. So it's still kind of straight, you know.
That's you ever use the falling technique? I haven't tested this, but I've heard about this. Yeah, the falling starts, and it's kind of a cheat, I guess, if you're working acceleration.
They scare the crap out of people.
Yeah, they're scary. I mean, you're falling.
They'll fall like 75 degrees or 275 degrees, and then they'll start running. And I'm like, you got way more to go, and they do not want to do
45.
Because the hard part is too about that is after that they want to take a really big step. They want to get their knee to their chest, take a big step.
Yeah, but we're trying to keep that.
Yeah, because especially in I mean, I guess this can also work for football too, because you guys take almost like negative steps. You know, if you're starting off the line at a 100-meter dash, your first step comes back still. You know, the distance between the foot that you're taking off with and your first step is probably like a foot apart. It's not that far. And that's where people get tripped up, is they think they need to take a really big step, but then that stands them right up. You know, it's where you guys know when you train, you know, those big dummies, you know, you're trying to push your feet are coming back constantly, you know, and you're kind of doing, what is it called? Like fire feet.
Yeah.
A little
Quick
bit.
feet for sure.
Yeah.
Quick feet.
Yeah. So that's at least with two completely different sports, you know, that can correlate in something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's one guy, Tony Holler. I like a lot of his systems. He has a track football consortium, he calls it. And it's like putting those two things together. He's like sprinters, speed work, and then track and football, same deal, kind of trying to be fast, explosive, accelerate, and top speed. Obviously, if you're catching, getting a breakaway, running downfield, you're very similar to track.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Or at least to sprinting in track. Yeah, okay. Good stuff, man. So with that, let's see, speed. We're kind of touched a little bit on acceleration there, a little bit on speed work. With our speed, what else do we want to cover? Type 2 muscle fibers are essential here. I think it's also important to mention, if your goal is top speed, you should be sprinting a lot, at least 2-3 times a week, right? I also think we obviously have strength in here. We know there was actually a recent study. I meant to brush up on it before this, but I think it was 18-year-old soccer players, and they had 3 different modalities they were testing out. So it was strength training 2 times a week. It was sprint work 2 times a week, sprint and something else, sprint and plyometric work 2 times a week. And then functional training, they said, which was band work and some other weird type of strength work, but not exactly like your typical strength training work. And in that study, all the soccer athletes had much better performance gains from the pure strength work. So obviously strength work is very significant to improve performance in athletics. Soccer players run a lot, so they've got a lot of endurance, but this improved their speed and their overall performance in game. So important stuff.
I think that's a good key to touch on. Yeah, I think that's a good key to touch on, is like a lot of people get carried away with the sport specific training and stuff, especially for younger kids, you know, because it's like you see a swimmer and you're in the gym and you go, all right, I'm going to practice that same type of motion, you know, and it's like, that's not really what you're trying to do in the strength training world, right? The kids, they go to practice, they practice their sport, right? That's their skill work. They come to the gym and they do the standard basic, if you will, strength training stuff, right? Your compound moves, your basic moves that build the strength. Then you go back to practice with what you're building, and then you keep practicing your sport, and those two go together, and now you become better at your sport. You're almost wasting your time in the gym just doing sport specific style stuff. You know, and I think that stuff can be important. Certain moves at the very high level, you know, when you are a very strong athlete and you're very good at your sport, now you can get into the nitty gritty things of, all right, I need to really work on this angle or whatever it might be. But I think especially at the younger age, the most important thing is to practice your sport and get in the gym and hit the basics, if you will, squats, deadlifts, bench, overhead presses, right? Core work, all that, rotations, huge, you know, all that stuff. Any sort of movement that you would do, you're practicing getting stronger and then going to hit your sport. You know, that is basically the summary of that study. What you're saying, you know,
well-balanced strength training routine is essential.
And now you put on top of it, right, some plyo work and some power work, which we'll get to later. But you put all that together, and now you're really maximizing your gains, and then getting better at your sport on top of it. You know, that's the most important thing.
I had an experience with that, you know, not too long ago with someone, they wanted more that sport specific stuff. Like I said, I really don't like that term. Yeah. You know, they were a diver and they came back from, I think it was Germany. And when they came back, they're like, oh, we like learn how to do like Zercher squats, but heel elevated, you know? So I taught them how to, you know, just do like the heel elevation Zercher squats. But then their father was like kind of coaching them with it. And the way they had their hips tilted, I'm sitting here and I'm like, is very unoptimal or suboptimal for their knees. You know, I'm like, their knees are just going to go right out the sides with just the load that they were putting. And because he said, oh, because in diving, you're not supposed to have a hip hinge like at all. I'm like, well, that's the reason why they're putting that plate underneath your heel, is so your hip hinge is less. You know, you're kind of taking away a little bit, so you can have that stability. But at the end of the day, it's still a squat. You know, it needs to be done correctly, no matter what the sport that you do does.
Right, exactly.
Because in general, it's like, yes, if I have a strong core and a very strong, you know, bounce, even if I'm not a diver, I'm not going to collapse if I go onto a diving board. You know, so it shouldn't be like, you know, we shouldn't differentiate between, oh, this is diving specific squat and this is a regular squat.
Yeah.
It's like there's a reason why it's Zercher, because Zercher squat is a normal exercise and heel elevated. So you're taking two things that are normal, to achieve a more common position, but still achieve that ultimate strength build.
Still trying to squat.
Yeah,
when it comes down to it.
And I had to try to convince him a little bit. And I was like, no, it's not, because you're going to hurt his knees, like it's not the fact that he's, just squatting with too much weight or doing it. Like, it's just an incorrect squat.
Right. Exactly.
And especially for his anatomy as well.
Yeah. I mean, how old was this athlete? Do you recall?
I believe he's 14 or 15.
Okay. Yeah. So also like super young. It's like,
and a very, very good diver as well.
Yeah.
Like competes internationally.
Amazing.
Like that. Yeah.
That's it.
I think that goes on to another topic of proper technique too, right? Especially with speed work. If you're practicing your sprints throughout the week in any form, right? Strength training, power training, speed training, right? We want quality movement. So that goes back to rest times now, right? So if you're sprinting and you're going 10 seconds, let's say, that's how long your sprint takes, maybe even less, whatever it might be. But you should probably multiply that, I would say by 5 to 8 times. So your working time, and then you multiply that. So if it's 10 seconds, 5 to 8 is 50 to 80 seconds of rest, right? So now that we have plenty of rest, it gives our body time to recover and then we hit that set again with perfect form. And that's what truly builds proper technique. And, with power, we want 100% effort every single time, so every single rep, you're going to lose a little bit, right? Because fatigue is still there. But, if you're 97% plus, right, we're still getting really good effort out of it, right? Good work. And, if you're down to 90%, your session's probably over. You're starting to really fatigue out. You recover and come back to it 2 days later,
Once you drop a certain percentage off, it's just like, okay, we're not succeeding at building power, building speed. It's time to drop off.
Exactly.
And especially with speed work too. Like, obviously, as the fatigue comes, it's easier for your form to break down or just have any kind of breakdown with weightlifting. But it's also very dependent on the exercise too. Like if I'm just doing a simple bicep curl, may get a little swing in there. May not be the worst thing, can get those extra reps if you need to. But if you're sprinting, there's so many different
mechanics going on.
So you can have a critical breakdown in multiple different, forms, such as your arm action, your knee drive, you can start butt kicking, you can start reaching, so many things. So even just talking about that quality, it's even if a higher rest time is needed for stuff with more movement and different and just a lot more mechanics and stuff like that, especially with sprinting. Because, if you want to take, like a bicep curl to a squat, you have many different mechanical failures.
Multiple joints, multiple things going,
on.
Multiple joints, more rest needed.
But the only thing is people don't understand with sprinting is like, even though the quality may go down, the injury risk still doesn't quite go up. I don't want to say it, obviously it does go up, but it's not scaring people, whereas if you have like 400 pounds in your back and you're starting to fail, it's going to scare people. Like, I shouldn't do this again, but people are going to keep sprinting.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. And
but that also could be slowing them down because now their mechanics are falling off. They can't put in that maximum effort.
Right.
And as much as you might be able to do some repeat sprints, if they're not helping you get faster, what's the purpose of them? Why,
Right.
Like
and if you're always running fatigued or your form's breaking down, right now you're practicing poor technique or poor quality, right? And that's not what you want. If you're always squatting in the gym and you're always pushing yourself way past the point where you should be, technique's always falling apart, and now you're gonna start squatting like that. That's how your squat is gonna start because that's all you're practicing now. Bad technique. If you only practice good technique, good reps, you stop when breakdown starts, you're gonna have good technique, right? You're gonna keep building that.
Your nervous system remembers too. It knows. And those bad habits, if you keep practicing bad habits, then every squat becomes a bad habit squat.
Absolutely.
Practice good habits, good habit squat. Good technique.
And that's what I like to tell too, like people with our distance runners as well. Obviously when they get tired, they kind of shorten up everything. And I mean, in general too, when you're going for distance, you're not going for the maximum speed. Obviously you want to be as fast as you can be for the distance you are running. The terms I like to use is more just efficiency. You want your body to be as efficient as it can,
100%.
producing as much power as it needs to without going over, also without leaving a whole bunch in the tank when you're like, oh crap, I could have done a lot better.
Yeah.
So when they're running like sprints and stuff, or the difference between them running sprints and long runs is that once they get past a certain point, and their body's kind of comfortable, doesn't really do much for you other than the fact it's like, okay, cool, I can now run 10 miles. But if I'm just staying in the same kind of pace the whole time, it's not, flat, not up and down or anything, like no hills. It's not going to benefit you to be faster in a mile or something like that. Obviously if you are training for a 10 mile or further, the benefit comes, more from that. But if you're trying to be faster in 1 mile or a 2 mile run, then it's more about how long can you stay in an anaerobic state before everything starts? Because then obviously, even if you get tired and you're still able to keep your form, the breakdown won't be as much, but then you're just not going to be as fast. And then your body during training just will not really grow, as you're kind of going past the point of where it's like, okay, now we're just comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. Then there's a good combo of things with that. Cause it's like, I don't know I like Dr. Phil Maffetone. He's got a big thing. He's into zone 3. Well, he doesn't care about the zones because there's some debate on that. But 180 minus your age is like aerobic efficiency. So that's 180 minus your age. Depending on how fit you are, you might add 5 beats per minute. We're talking heart rate here. And so this is like, he recommends you do a lot of long runs at this heart rate. And that makes it so that you can run faster at a lower heart rate. But then if you are looking for those 1 mile, 2 mile, you absolutely need time in that anaerobic phase to be able to build that speed and the efficiency in that speed. But I think it's a combination of both that are important. And it depends on the person's aerobic base. And then you need that combo of the anaerobic stuff too, for sure. Yeah, good stuff, guys.
It's funny that you mentioned the heart rate too, because even just for being how big I am, like I'm 6'8", 270, my resting heart rate, even if I'm just completely calm, is about 80 to 90 beats a minute.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, but if I am working out like pretty hard, I can jump to like 120, but then it's like right back down.
Yeah.
I'm not super out of breath for the whole, like my body can recover, but I also got a lot of body, that my heart's pumping blood through. And it's like, I don't feel like I always make the joke like, oh man, I got to bend over, like tie my shoe or go upstairs and I'm out of breath or something like that. But it's not obviously as bad. But if I have to if I run like 50 meters, like a good hustle, I'm not sitting there for 10 minutes like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I feel like I recover faster from that than just running upstairs real quick. But
sure. That's one measure of aerobic fitness, how quickly your heart rate comes down in between bouts of activity. Yeah.
That's always the funny thing I'm always measuring, because I noticed that recently. I was like, I have a really high just resting heart rate.
Is that just when you're sitting, or is it like, because like real resting heart rate is like first thing in the morning, like measure it when you're laying in bed, just woke up.
Even if I'm like really just like relaxing, like super chill, nothing like just sitting down or standing, it's pretty much all the same. It doesn't really go below 80. Yeah. And that's that I've noticed at like the higher end of normal.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that could be your size, but it could also be, you typically could change that with longer bouts of aerobic activity, like that zone 3 stuff. But everybody's different too. Yeah.
Get out and get running.
Right. Or I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. We've got some of the stuff that covers that here. Like I liked strong endurance, this course I took. They talk about like kettlebell snatches, or you could do barbell clean and press, barbell snatch. You do 1, 2, 3 reps on the minute, keeps it aerobic. You could do it for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes. Long bouts of that. It's still aerobic, but it's also power training. And this is good stuff for some of the athletes to do too. You're looking to work on power, you pick 85, 90% of your max, you do 1, 2, 3 reps, and you do it every minute on the minute until either your heart rate gets too high, your quality falls off, your power falls off, or there's some sort of technique change, or a tempo change. All these things are very important.
Yeah, because when I do cardio,
those are stop signs.
Yeah. My cardio is usually like I'll ride the bike, and then another thing about me is I like to race motorcycles. So a lot of those guys,
very anaerobic typically. Yeah.
They will ride bikes just for the, I guess, not necessarily the form or everything, but it's just a good way to, kind of be in that position that you want to be in. If you want to say the more, what's it called? Sport specific training.
Yep.
But you get good cardio with that, and just to be in the position that you are when you're riding a motorcycle. Even when I'm doing my more harder kind of sprints with the bike. Usually it's just a stationary bike. Like at the gym, you can adjust I have one that I can adjust the gears on it. So like gear 12 or like 14, something like that. My heart rate is still around like 150 to 160. And I could be like 20 minutes in, still like really pumping away.
Yeah, 150, 160.
And so my heart rate doesn't really go super high when it comes to actual like just activity, rather if it's anaerobic or aerobic, it doesn't exceed a certain point where it's like, I might need to calm down.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, that's good. Maffetone's on, what are you, 25, right?
Yeah.
25 years old? Yeah. I mean, you'd be, so 180 minus your age, what are we getting there? 155?
Yep.
155. Yeah. So that's about where he'd want you to be. Depending on how fit you are, maybe you add 5 beats per minute.
I'm definitely like, oh my gosh, like I'm still going, but I'm like, I'm fine. But like, I'm not feeling like I have to get off the bike, and I've done some 40-minute, goes on the bike where I just keep going. And I try to keep the way I try to keep a goal is so I'm not just slowing down, is I try to keep the RPMs above, X amount of RPMs that I choose for that day, which obviously it's easier and harder to achieve when you have a higher gear, but it's easier in the sense that you have to push less to achieve, but you also have to push harder to achieve that. And so I'm just glad that at least we even having like a higher resting heart rate, that my heart rate doesn't just shoot off when I come into contact with any kind of aerobic or just higher intensity exercises too.
Yeah. This reminds me of Check Engine Light, this book I read. These are kind of like, you have your own mental checks of like where you are fitness wise, and very important for everybody to know where they are. Cool. You also reminded me, I was going to see maybe springtime, we might take a trip to Mountain Creek if you guys are down, little downhill mountain biking.
Oh, hell yeah.
We'll do some easy trails. That sounds like you might be down. Rent some bikes, do a work trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'll be fun. Try to get it going in the I don't know, whenever the bike park opens. So. It might be April, May or something like that.
I've definitely said,
good time.
Sounds like a plan.
Something like that,
Be a good time.
Start racing motorcycles and bikes.
That's
just
it.
Normal bicycles.
Might as well.
Well, I think next, soreness is a good one for people to realize, right? Like speed training, if you're sore, I believe you should rest another day. Power training, I'm also kind of on that side as well. Like the goal is to have 100% quality and effort, right? So if you're sore, you're not 100%. So that's where you got to learn your body too, and like, all right, this session might take me 2 or 3 days to be 100%. And then you kind of plan your programming around that. Or your coach might learn that too if you're getting coached as well. But strength training, that's kind of where, if you're extremely sore in the area that you're training that day, it's like, maybe I take another rest day. But ideally, your programming, right, has you with plenty of rest in there. But, you're going to have some soreness every once in a while in the back, maybe, and you're training legs or vice versa, and it's not the end of the world. I think you can get a quality session. In your session, you might feel it a little bit or you might feel fine, right? You have a good quality session. But I think soreness, I love the mentality of pushing through, it's like, hey, get a good workout in. But when it comes to speed or power, it's like, we don't want to push through that soreness because not only are we not getting the best work we can get in, injury risk is a lot higher, and especially with explosive movements like that. And, your connective tissue, your muscle is not 100%. Your injury risk is much higher. So keep that in mind when you're implementing speed and power training.
Also, odds are you're not going to be able to put in max speed or max power if you're or at least that percentage you're trying to hit. And that's also a good point. It's good to you should have some sort of measurements for that, right? Like if you typically sprint, a certain time, and now this day you're sprinting and you can't even get close to that time. Maybe you're not that sore, but something's up. Maybe your CNS is fried, your central nervous system's fried. And okay, I shouldn't sprint today. I can't hit the normal speeds I hit. Or I can't lift the certain weight that I lift for speed in my power training. Another indicator, soreness is a great indicator, but sometimes it's not the only one.
Yeah, I think it's also notable to think about also just the age if you're working with an athlete, because sometimes they are able to, some athletes will kind of exaggerate how sore they are, but I also don't think you should be necessarily scared of being sore because sometimes you can work pretty lightly and still be like a weird amount of sore for how light you worked, because some of my best jumping days when I did high jump and compete, I was pretty sore, but I feel like that's also due to just, that my muscles are just kind of also ready, like I feel like they're fired up still. Cause I didn't work out super close. I would hit, like I say, a heavy leg day Tuesday and I would compete Friday, but I really wouldn't do anything Wednesday, Thursday. And then even leading up to my meet on Friday, most of my days, like I would still be a little sore, you know. I feel like that just has to deal with maybe just the tightness too. So because obviously like, because the power that I had, I feel like is better than if I just kind of did not really anything much for the whole week and then try to compete on Friday. And my body feels like, oh, like I feel great. I'm rested up. But I'm just, all of a sudden I go to jump and then I'm just sluggish, you know, where I feel like that at least me personally, you know, this will be dependent on each person, that even maybe just a little bit of soreness to feel like your body, you know, did something, and just being up even helps you mentally prepared for whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're playing soccer or a football game or something like that. Because I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I'm so sore, I'm not going to do anything. I can't, you know, or like, I feel like sometimes that you shouldn't be as scared as soreness when it comes to certain ages of athletes as well that you're working with, you know, because obviously the older you get, the harder it is just in general to recover. And sometimes that soreness definitely, like you said, is an indicator that you shouldn't really be doing a lot, you know, but it can be very dependent.
Yeah, 100%. It always depends on the athlete. You always have to know yourself, right? And learn. Obviously, you're learning about yourself every time. But yeah, I mean, usually light soreness is going to be okay. And when you got to compete, you got to compete. So hopefully you're planning that out well. But it sounds like you started to learn that, oh, when I do legs on Tuesday, I actually feel good to compete.
I think it's just Friday. That blood flow that my body is trying to produce so I can get that norepinephrine going.
Light soreness is definitely different than heavy soreness, right? You obviously weren't doing legs on Thursday when you compete on Friday, because you know you'd be in the hole and you'd be like, this isn't happening.
Yeah, but I shouldn't be scared on Friday, like, oh my gosh, I'm sore. I shouldn't, I'm not going to do well.
I think you should never be scared, especially when it comes time to compete. It's like you need to be confident. You need to trust in your training, trust in what you've done. Believe in yourself no matter what, because I mean, it's go time right now. It's game time. You need to get your head in the right spot. And even if you're not ready, you better turn it around and be like, I'm ready.
Competition day doesn't wait for anybody.
That's right.
Know? So that's it. All you can do is learn from it next time. If you're, you know, if the soreness affected your competition in a negative way, next competition you go, I'm going to change what I did prior, you know, but at the end of the day, it's like, you trained for this, you're ready to roll, and you compete, you know, that's right. It.
I'm sore, but for this day, I'm giving it everything I got. I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to do my job.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And of course, that's very dependent too on like what you're actually doing too. Like when Kyle and I lift, you know, we don't want to be sore when we're going for our last week of the programs that we're on and we're at our heaviest, you know, most intense stuff. Like, you know, if I walk into the gym feeling sore and I got to deadlift, you know, a huge amount of weight for 5 reps, I'm going to be like, you know, like
a lot of the time too with strength training, it's like, you know, when you're towards the end of a program and you're getting ready for a 1 rep max, you know, if you're doing a ton of volume and everything else, you're not only fatiguing your muscles, because now you're going to most likely be sore, you're going to feel that, but you're also fatiguing your nervous system, right? So not only is muscles take time to recover, but your nervous system takes even longer to recover. So if we're getting ready to hit a 1 rep max, we need our muscles to be 100%. So that's why we would lower volume significantly. So we're not doing as much damage, we're not putting as much stress on the muscles, right? We're hitting maybe 1 or 2 hard sets on a move at very low reps, right? Because that's our goal. We're getting ready for a 1 rep max. But that way we're also allowing time for the nervous system to be recovering. Really, towards the end of a program, your goal is to be training the nervous system, right? Most of your program, you're training to build muscle size and you're building strength along with it. But towards the end of a program, your volume's getting so low that you're training the nervous system to fire with all the new muscle that you built. Right. So the goal is to have the muscles be 100% for the most part. That way, when it's ready for your 1 rep max day, you're slowly taking the fatigue away so that your nervous system's 100% and ready to fire.
Both 100%.
So that you're ready to go. And that's not only with strength training, it's with everything.
Yeah,
right?
with everything.
It's
Power
the
training, skill
same
training,
kind
speed.
of thing. You know,
the central nervous system. That's definitely the hidden factor that not a lot of people think about. They're like, all right, I feel like muscular recovery is good and mental recovery is good. And that's all they think there really is. You know, it's a very common thing for people not to know about your central, just your nervous system in general, you know, because they feel like they're going in, they're feeling good and they don't understand why they can't move or do the best that they can, you know, but they feel good, you know, and then
muscles
also
feel good. They just, CNS is fried.
But that's the thing. The funny thing is how, you know, it's like a hidden factor, but how long and how important it is, you know, because not only obviously is it very important, but how long, as Kyle was saying, it takes to recover.
Yep.
You know, especially like with running, very, very light, but still builds that, you know, that fatigue. And so when you're running 40 miles a day, you don't realize that a little bit of fatigue just keeps adding up.
Yeah.
And then eventually
40 miles.
Did I say a day?
Yeah,
40 miles a week.
Impressive.
This dude's an animal.
40 miles a week.
That's
40 miles a
definitely
week.
car
That's
distance.
better.
That's car distance for me, no doubt.
Yes. Yeah, for
40
real.
miles a week. Yeah.
All right.
Just making sure. I'm like, who does this guy know?
Wow. 40 miles a week. You know, that fatigue really builds up over that really long period of time. So you feel good for a very long time while running. And then all of a sudden, these long distance runners are just in the gutter.
Yeah. That's why you got to taper as you get closer to an event.
And then unfortunately, a lot of things I've come across are like, you can't take one day off of running. You're just going to lose it all. That's all I hear. And I'm like, you'll be fine. I'm like, you've been running for like 15 weeks straight. Take a week off. Just lay in bed. You're going to be fine. You know, I'm like, you're 17 years old. You know,
I would have a struggle with a week off too. But you do 6 miles that week or 9 miles that week. You do a couple 3 mile runs. But but
I'm trying to like explain to them like, you can. Your body will be
You're
fine.
not going to lose
You may
everything.
feel a little weird jumping back into it, but I'm like, give yourself a day or two.
Yep. Well, fatigue's like I always say, it's like a big bucket with a little hole at the bottom, you know, and you stress, right? Workout, all the different types of workouts you can do is a form of stress, like we've talked about in the past. But that is just water getting put into the bucket, right? And now you have that little hole in the bottom that's slowly draining. Now you keep adding stress into there until that bucket starts filling up, right? It can't drain faster than what it fills up. And eventually, either with proper training and deloads and all that stuff, tapering, you're able to get that water out, right? And then you're 100% for whatever it might be. But if you're doing too much, right, that thing just fills up. And then eventually when that bucket overflows, injuries, overtraining, right, it's all that stuff. So
it's a good analogy.
Yeah, you got to keep that in mind, you know, whatever it might be. That you're gonna feel fatigued during the course of a program, sprinting, power, work, strength, all of that together, right? Fatigue is going to build. That's the point of it, right? That's how you know you're doing enough work. But eventually you have to keep in mind, all right, eventually my fatigue is going to get to a point where bad things will happen unless I give my body a break to fully get back into it, make my adaptations and get back to training, right? Now you make that little dip and then you just keep climbing again.
And you go back up. I like that analogy too, because the bucket also grows as you get stronger.
Absolutely.
Right? As you get stronger, more fit, your bucket gets bigger and you can handle more stress.
Absolutely. Well, and that's another thing I want to touch on too is even with sprinters, right? Higher level sprinters are going to be able to produce more force, and that creates more fatigue as well, right? And it's with lifting too, and all that. Right? I want to put that all together. Yep. The more advanced you are, the more efficient you are, but also the more fatigue you do produce
by doing doing the higher
exactly
the higher output. So doing 90% of your max is going to fatigue you more than maybe when you were
exactly
when your 90% of your max was 100 pounds.
Someone lifting 200 pounds versus someone lifting 400 pounds, right? The fatigue that's going to hit back on your body is different between the two. That's why a lot of weaker people, right, less advanced people are able to do a lot more volume or more weight and be able to be right back into training the next time versus someone who's a lot stronger or, you know, a lot faster, right? It's just the recovery demands are much different. That's also in your own training, right? When you first start, you're like, man, I could do a gazillion sets of this, you know, and then you get more advanced and you're like, yeah, 3 sets is good for, you know, for the week, you know, or whatever it might be. Yeah, you can really feel on certain lifts or movements, definitely.
Yeah, because you got people who are especially just starting, not necessarily even just starting training, you know, maybe like have a few months to a year, like kind of into it. You know, those guys come in, they'd be deadlifting, say like 200 pounds that day, might be heavy for them, but they could come in hungover. You know, like we know people, you know, they party and then they come over and they're just not in it. They still get through the workout, you know, but it's like, and then we see like they get through the workout, but then we're like at the same amount of fatigue, you know, lifting double or triple the amount of weight that they're, or the total
you got to be
volume
spot on for what you got. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny seeing just the difference, you know, and it was definitely a funny thing when Kyle and I sat down and realized that, you know, maybe we are advanced lifters, you know, even though that we're young, like we're pulling a lot of weight, pushing, you know,
that's it.
It's kind of a funny thing to sit there and be like, you know, maybe we're just at that point. You know, it's kind of a weird thing to say. You know, I mean, I'm really proud of myself and proud for Kyle too, because I mean, we definitely worked hard to get there. You know, a lot of days. You know,
a lot of dedication.
There have been days where I walk into Kyle's gym, we'll do like 2 things. He's like, "No, we're just going home."
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing about understanding yourself and training, right? It's like if you walk into the gym and you have something planned, let's say 600 pounds, and you're at 300 and it feels like you're lifting the world. It's like, maybe I should pack this up and try another time, but that's the sweet. You can push through it. All that's doing is just dumping a whole lot of water in your bucket and you are spilling everywhere, and the chances
the water's higher than you realize.
Way higher. Well, that's too, and you're going to have plenty of days but the best thing you can do is realize what's happening, go, today's not the day, recover, get back into the gym, right? Some people absolutely, they can't stand it. They're like, they tear everything down. This program's horrible, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's like, dude, it's one day, right? Just recover, get back to it.
Let it go.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes you got to know when to let it go.
That's it. Big time.
Regroup and hit it another day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because that's the funny thing with some people that we know, coming in, working out under the conditions that they just did last night, barely any sleep, drinking a lot of alcohol or something. And then, say that's on a Monday, then we both come in Tuesday and they're fine. After lifting, what they did and the partying the night before, and us coming in, working out, with 2 or 3 times more volume, like you said, still at the same level, which is kind of funny how, as you do get stronger and just the different levels, just how different you can be as an athlete and just more of a strength, if we're talking about that. People like I said, just starting out can recover so fast, that they can, as he was talking about, just to have more volume comparatively to what they're, to their strength and the volume that we have comparatively to our strength. And then even the people that, are just so much stronger than us, coming in doing 2 sets of this, 2 sets of that, and then they're leaving, and that they had a great workout because they're deadlifting 800 pounds for 3 and then do that again.
Yeah. That's just the next level too, right? Like, I don't think very many people at all, will be deadlifting 800 pounds or at that
it's level. Like the 1% of 1%.
Right. That's we're talking, a whole different level. Like I've seen people that do, they'll squat and deadlift on the same day and they don't do it again for the next week. Right. Or there's people that alternate it. So heavy deadlifts one week and then light the next. And so you're basically getting 14 days of rest between your heavy deadlift and then your next heavy deadlift and then heavy squat and heavy squat. So it's like that gets very advanced. And I don't think, I think it can also get very confusing for people that don't understand that part as much. I do think most of the people that are watching, and if you're not really lifting over 600 pounds or even 500, right? I don't think you have to worry too much about like 14-day rests and all that. Yeah. But I think the best thing
basically going to be everyone,
right? You can take away from this is that you understand your body's recovery, right? You have a hard training session. You have to realize, all right, maybe this might take 2 or 3 days, right? Maybe the law of 72 hours is one that I like to talk about, where it's like, that's optimal rest. Your body should be pretty much fully recovered and ready to train that movement again. And I think that goes for sprinting, any sort of power work, right? You have all your cleans and snatches and stuff. And then all your basic strength work, right? It goes for that too. 48 hours is kind of the minimum that a lot of people talk about, right? Is like, that's pretty much that bottom line of rest. But I even like to go towards that 72 hours where it's like, if you did legs, 72 hours, especially because other muscle groups take longer to recover than others. A lot of the times legs take a lot longer than even chest, or back I know is one that takes longer as well, right? So there's different muscle groups that take longer.
Smaller the muscle, usually the quicker it recovers.
And then that goes to the bigger the muscle, the more force it produces, right? And like we talked about earlier, the more fatigue that comes to that muscle. So those are just things to keep in mind with your training and stuff like that.
I think there were some good points there for you guys too, though. Just like noting when you hit the advanced level, like, or being like, oh, maybe I'm advanced now. Like, well, maybe this is why I'm struggling with certain things. But also
that's the one thing I wanted to say is, as you go through your training journey, right, you can't keep doing what's always going to work. So there's going to be a time where like you start off, right, you're doing something and you're getting all the gains, but then you hit that wall, right, the plateau. Then you move into your next phase of like, all right, maybe I got to change my volume or intensity, whatever it might be, right? And then you move into your next phase, call it the intermediate stage of just like, all right, I've been doing this for a year or two. I know what I'm doing. I'm getting some gains now. I broke through my plateau. But what I used to do doesn't work anymore, right? And now what you're doing at this stage is working, but then you get to that next stage of like, oh, this is not working anymore, right? So it can get very weird, and you might even revert back to old ways. So like, oh, maybe I got to go back to this way, right? And it does not work that way, you know. So it's like you're always evolving, and when you hit that plateau, that's your body saying, what I'm doing now no longer works.
Doesn't work.
I have to find something new, right? You have to play around with certain things. But I think that was a great point, right? Is like moving into the different stages of whatever it is that you do, right? If it's sprinting, right, or their strength work, all that stuff, you're going to hit different areas that you have to push through, right? Those plateaus. And that's just listening to your body at the end of the day, you know, it's a weird stage.
Tracking.
Absolutely.
The more things you track, definitely the more you get done, right? The more you get dive
break
into.
through those plateaus.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. But I think that's one of the things from my own experience, right? It's very weird. You get to that stage, you're like, oh man, it's frustrating.
What's going on?
You know,
right
you're
now?
like, man, this is not working, blah, blah, blah. And it's just your body saying, we got to switch. We got to change something up. We got to do something different, right? So learn from your past. Go, all right, I've been doing this. Let me try something else. Maybe if it's always been super high volume, try some lower volume.
Maybe
if
you do for lower volume.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe some lower volume, maybe some different moves, maybe focus on other parts of your training. But yeah, I think that's a very good point, you know, to take from is you're always evolving in your training. And,
and I'm very lucky to be able to the fact that, you know, we technically have two different body types, but it seems to be that our body types respond very similarly to how we train too, you know, so that's where I find myself very lucky to have him as a training partner too. You know,
it's a great person to find.
So
you guys keep pushing each other.
Yeah. Very funny how it's, you know, if you just look at us, two totally different body types, you know, and especially just for how tall I am, I'm very thankful that my body type just reacts very well to just strength, you know, just to be overall, how strong can I get? And I thank my dad for that because that's all him right there, you know, and I'm very glad that I you know, that I'm not super skinny. Like I was very skinny as growing up for being as tall as I was.
You're tall. Yeah.
You know, let's see, I think at my lightest weight, I was this tall at 6'8" at 160 pounds. Yikes. I look at a picture of myself, wow, and I'm now over 100 pounds heavier than that, you know, and you can look at me and be like, you could put on more, you know, without looking like it's a little too much, you know, you know, and so it's kind of funny seeing then, like I said, very thankful that I found someone that I could work with and pretty much achieve the same results, you know, doing pretty much the same things, you know, and, you know, the way we work out, like today's our rest day. And man, do I love my Wednesdays.
Rest days are
nice. Rest day.
And he's always trying to add a weekend in there. And I'm not going to lie, I never show up to those weekend lifts.
I can definitely account for that one.
We did 12
weeks of Sunday squats
and
solo.
guess who did 1 week? No, you did 11 weeks of Sunday.
Weeks,
I did 1 day
of
Sunday squats.
Oh man, that's funny.
But so I want to ask you guys, speed, right? We all three, speed, power, strength, quality of work, 100% effort. Now we got speed, right? We practice sprinting if that's what you want to get better at, right? You practice the direct thing. Power, same thing, right? There's different ways, like we talked, the rest periods, all that. There's different ways to attack power. And then our strength, right? The fundamentals, squatting, benching, hinging, deadlifts, all that stuff. How would you guys implement that into a training program over the course of a week?
Oh, good. Well, I think that's something I want to touch on earlier. Speed always comes first, right? If we're lifting and sprinting on the same day, you should be sprinting before you're lifting, because otherwise your strength or power training is going to compromise your speed. Yep, great.
Just
question.
The injury risk is way higher too.
100%. Also a problem. We don't want to increase injury risk. And it's basically a double whammy if you do strength before sprinting. It's like, okay, I'm going to get hurt and I'm not going to be as fast. Waste of time. You just messed up that session, right? So our order is always going to be speed first, power second, and then strength is going to be last. But then I guess the other question depends on the person and how many are they training 3 days a week? Are they training 5 days a week? Are they training 2 days a week? You know? So there's a lot of questions that go with that.
Now, are you talking about what you're what you're doing during a week, during a 12-week program or something of a
just
amount of week program,
over one training session, right? Like say someone watching this wants to implement all three into a training session, right? What would be the way that they can throw that in there, right? Like we said, strength first, then some power, or they can be together, right? Strength, your speed. I said strength, I think, but speed first, right? And that can be your power training for the day, right? It might be. And then you move into your strength work. Maybe another day you don't do speed work and you do some power work before, right? And then some strength to finish it off. But I think, like we always say, right, strength at the end, because if you're inflicting damage into the muscles, right? And like you guys said, you go into sprint work, the chances of really hurting something is definitely much higher.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
and even when you're trying to implement now the strength aspect, going away from that speed and power, because like you said, speed and power can be done, simultaneously. Even just when you're doing sprints, you do like a parachute sprint or just a prowler, where you're really shoving the sled really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Now when we're trying to implement strength, people think that it still needs to be higher reps, when ultimately you can really knock it down to say you can go heavier, but make it 3 reps, something like that, where, when you're talking about strength, it kind of ultimately does come down to just heavier things, when you really try to get to the bottom line. Like obviously you want to have, your volume where you do lighter stuff and higher reps where you can gain muscle. But if you do that for a really long time, even with like really optimally, you get your rest, you manage your fatigue, you will get stronger. But in a very like ultimate goal and bottom line, if you don't even just practice how to, lift something heavy, you're not going to get as strong as someone who knows how to lift it just heavy.
Yeah, you're not practicing the skill of it, and you're also not getting necessarily the max neuromuscular adaptations you can from those heavy strength works, right?
Because people will get scared, they're like, oh, you don't want to lift too heavy. It's like, yes, of course you don't want to lift too heavy, but don't do it for 10 reps like you were just doing your volume or your power and speed. Do it for that 3 reps, 4 reps, like really act like you want to pull it all, leave it all in those 3 reps, and that's, the injury chance, of course, will be lower, given that you're doing it properly, and it actually isn't too heavy, because obviously you can go too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're adding in at the end there, try to see how your fatigue is. And because that's why I like to train my athletes. Sometimes they get a little too scared. I'm like, see, I put 6 reps here, and it's like a push press or something with dumbbells. I'm like, you can go heavier with this, unfortunately it comes to being able just to hold it here, but when you're getting into the heavier stuff, that's when you actually can train that strength. And then that strength comes right back to when you start training sprints. Now you're just able to really shoot off with that, really, like you said, manage your CNS and just fire your nervous system even more powerfully.
That's that type 2 muscle fibers, right? If you're training really heavy, you're going to be stimulating more type 2 muscle fibers versus the type 1, the endurance ones. You're going to get more with the lighter weight, higher rep type thing. So yeah, very important.
To finish it off, how the 3 of them come together, because that's one thing we didn't talk about. I think some people can understand, but right, if you're let's say a weaker individual, right, you're not as strong and you want to be as fast as you can. It's like back to the old days in middle school or even probably more elementary school. Who's the fastest kid on the playground, right? Of course. It's all good, but at that age, right? Who's the fastest one? Eventually, it gets to a point, right? You're only going to be able to go as fast as your body lets you, right? So if you don't strength train at all or do any power work, just sprinting is only going to get you so far, right? You're going to hit that wall. And that's where power and strength work comes in, right? You need that base of strength. The stronger you are, the higher your potential to produce power and then speed, right? That all comes together. So having the 3 of them together is super important, right? Don't just be an athlete out there going, well, I just want to get faster, but I don't want to get bigger or bulkier, right? Strength training doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get bigger or bulkier, right? But
unless you want to,
but eventually you're putting on lean muscle, I believe only helps up to a certain extent, of course. But when you're putting on lean muscle, it is contractile tissue that's going to benefit you, right? You put on some excess body fat that does nothing in terms of athletic ability, right? So if you're out there going, I only want to get faster, right? Strength train and power train and do power work, right? To get faster as well. They all come together, vice versa. I think doing sprint work or power work also helps you get stronger, right? It's a different stimulus. And same with power, right? They all interconnect in that sense too.
Yep.
So
they're all important. Yep.
Don't skip out on one of them. Get all 3 if you want to be the best.
That's it. Balance of qualities. And yeah, obviously it depends on your sport, how you need to balance your qualities, but it is important to balance that speed, power, strength, and put those all together. So let's see, quick summary. We have Coach Zach here, new coach. I hope you guys enjoyed some of his insights today. Welcome him to the team and to the podcast. Remember, movement before strength, before specialization. So if your joints don't move well, you should leave out certain strength exercises because if your joints can't adapt to the stresses of those exercises, we need to modify them or leave them out until you move well. Strength before specialization. So a lot of people are out there specializing first, wondering why they can't excel further in their sport. Maybe you need more strength and general physical preparedness. Maybe you need to improve your movement. And find the right balance of speed, power, and strength training to optimize your athleticism. Guys, thank you for joining me. This has been the ASC podcast. Like, subscribe, comment. We'd love to hear from you guys. And if you have an idea for a podcast, an episode you'd like to hear something about, comment. Send us a message if you know how to reach us. Thanks. Take care.